Hey, welcome back aboard the Nautilus. We got a full show today. We're going to be building off of some lessons we did in some other shows, and we're going to really dive into making some solid drawing. So Alpha 1 and I can't wait to start. Come on aboard.
And now, let's get ready to draw. You will need several sheets of paper, and a pencil, and a ruler. Grab your supplies. We'll wait.
Remember I asked you guys to send in suggestions of things that are really, really hard to draw? Well, almost everybody said, how do you draw people? How do you draw faces? How do you draw hands? How do you draw feet? Well, let's do that right now. Let's draw some faces, or let's draw one face anyway. And this is just going to be I don't know, let's call it a generic person, but we're going to get into the details of the face so we can really see what it takes to really make a human face. Now, when you think of the human face, what would be the first big shape that we would draw? The whole head, right? And what's a shape everybody knows you could use to create a human head? Ovals? Circles? Sure. So let's make a big oval, okay? But remember, in one of our other shows, we noticed that people don't always have perfectly oval or circular heads. Some people have triangular oval heads. Some people have even square oval heads. So in this case, we're going to pretty much keep it an oval, but remember the chin may be a little thinner, right? So it gets more of an egg shape. Now the first thing that we want to put in are some guidelines. And we'll see why we're going to do that in a second. Right down the middle, we're putting in a light line. This is our first guideline to keep the face symmetrical. And symmetry is a very, very important art word.
Hi, Jay. Symmetry. The quality of being made up of exactly similar parts facing each other or around an axis.
Now we have other guidelines to put in here, and they all base off of this one line. The first guideline we want to put in is the eye guideline. So starting at the top of the head, ending at the bottom of the head, we're kind of going to guesstimate where halfway is, and we're going to put in a guideline for the eyes. And we're leaving it very light because we're going to erase that later. Okay? Now some people think that's a little too low for the eyes, right? Do you think so? Well, it actually isn't. And when you observe human skulls, the eyes are right there in the middle. We've got the guideline for the eyes. Now the next guideline we want is the guideline for the nose. Now right halfway, the bottom half of the face here, coming from the eye guideline to the bottom of the chin here, we're going to guesstimate once again, and here's the nose guideline. Okay? One more guideline to go. It's the mouth guideline. And from the nose guideline to the bottom of the face, halfway again, what do you know? That's pretty cool, isn't it? Now we can figure out where the eyes, nose, mouth, and the ears actually go. So let's go right in for the eyes. Now once again, before we draw anything, we like to think of a shape we already know that we can compare it to. So with eyes, what shape are the eyes? Well, they're circles, right? Your eyeballs, they're stuck inside your head, right? But they're covered in a lid, right? So you can blink. So what we're going to do, we take that idea of the eyelid, it makes a shape like an oval, right? I'm going to draw it up here first. And look how I made a little bit of overlapping up there. So it creates kind of an eyelid. So right at the top of this guideline, we're making one curve. We'll put in another, and then underneath, we leave a little bit of space, and we create the illusion of an eyelid. From there, we can start getting into a little bit more detail. We put in the parts of the eye, like the iris. This is the part of your eye that has the color to it, and right in the middle is a pupil. Hey, while we're there, let's do a little bit of shading, which we're going to talk about in another show as well. So what I do is I put a little circle inside the pupil, like that, and then watch this. I darken it in all the way around. And it creates the illusion the eye's a little wet, which it is. Our eyes are full of water. Okay? And we're always producing tears to keep them wet so we can see better. Okay, right here we have our tear duct, speaking of water. So we put in a bit of a tear duct like that. Also, the iris, if you really look close in the mirror, there's all these little lines. You wonder what those lines are? Your iris is very much like the aperture of a camera, and it lets in light when it opens up, and it closes up to keep light out. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in some little lines, but only where, see where I put that highlight? On the opposite side. We're going to make it a little darker. And then as we go around, we don't have to put as many. Right? So we get kind of some eyes there. Okay, let's put in the nose. Now, what shape is the nose? Well, I think one of the other shows when we drew Dracula, remember we looked at a letter of the alphabet? Okay, so the letter V. Why do we use the letter V for a nose? Well, it's because of the nostrils. We've got basically two big holes right here. So what we're going to do is right here on each side, we're going to put in one little nostril and another nostril. And if we connected those, it would make like a V shape. Okay? Kind of looks like an alien, right? So we got to get them a little more human looking. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a curve to connect the two nostrils like that, looking more like a nose. And that same curve, we're just going to put one up there like that and another up there like that. And we have a nose. Now, we've kind of created a light source coming from here. So what we want to do is put in another line which shows the bridge of the nose right on the side. We can actually take that line, curve it up like that. And this creates the arch. If we imagine on the other side, this is the arch where eyebrows are going to eventually go. So we're getting more and more human as we go. Let's go to the mouth. Now, a letter of the alphabet I like to think of when I'm thinking about the mouth is the letter M, which mouth starts with the letter M. And when I draw a big, long letter M like that, does it look like a mouth? Well, let's put it in here, right on the guideline. Put that M in, kinda, right? And then I put in another half circle, and I got a bottom lip. If I just lightly indicate that same M up there, look, now I have an upper lip. Okay? Ears. Since we know where the eyes and the nose are, look at right that space right there. We can put in the ears. And what shape do we think about with ears? Circular? Curves? Yeah. And it's also good to think about what these actual things do. Like your ear itself actually collects sound, like a cup. So we're going to think of it like a cup. So here's that circular cup shape. We're putting that in. Okay. And there's a hard ridge around the edge. So we're just going to indicate that a little bit, like that. Okay. And there's extra surface area inside the ear. That's where all these crinkles and sort of curves are to collect more sound. So we're going to indicate that as another curve like that, and another one up above it. Okay. Not perfect, but it is indicating ears. And also the earlobe. Sometimes people have big earlobes, sometimes their earlobes connected to their face. It's all different for different people. In fact, earlobes are all kinds of sizes. And if you look all over the world, everybody's got different kinds of earlobes. The one thing that everybody has that's really, really different, especially where the face is concerned, is their hairline. How the hair connects to the head. So I'm going to indicate that a little bit. I'm going to show some hair coming off the sides of the head going into the temples of this person. And then I'm going to show how the hair comes right above the forehead. And look how we get this interesting shape now. But it looks like somebody with a crew cut, right? Hair always goes above the skull. And I notice this with a lot of young artists. They'll draw the hair right on top of the skull, and everybody looks like they have kind of a crew cut kind of situation. So what we want to do is now to build the hair off of the skull, we're going to add some more curved lines. Now, do you also notice I'm not drawing every hair? I notice a lot of other young artists will do this too, where they'll just draw every hair. And it takes a lot of time, and eventually it just looks kind of gray. So in this case, again, light is coming from this source. So we're just going to indicate, with a little bit of texture, just a few hairs here and there, right? Filling in the shape. And look what we get. Pretty neat, huh? Looking very human. And here we can throw in some more hair. Let's put in the eyebrows. Okay. Something that helps also is putting in eyelashes. Now when you look at eyelashes, they're not just little lines. They kind of get darker around the edges. So we're going to start here, just throwing a couple, and then get kind of dark at the edge. Same thing over here. Dark at the edge. Is that looking more human? Yeah. Could be a kid, could be a teenager, could be a boy, could be a girl, depending on how we change things around. Usually when you put an upper lip, a character is going to look a lot more like a female. Okay? So there we have it. Those are the basic parts of the human face. And of course, if we put in a neck, we're going to put two curved lines coming down from the cheeks a bit. Let's throw in a shirt. And there we have a person emerging. So the next step is to get a mirror at home, take a look at yourself, and do exactly what we did here. Take it apart step by step. Look at the size and the shape of your head. Start out with that. Put in your guidelines, and then just look at each one of these details and remember how we made each one of these details using letters of the alphabet and simple shapes everybody knows about. How's it going with that self-portrait? It's really hard, isn't it? You need a lot of practice. And another thing you need a lot of practice with is shading.
Shading. To introduce degrees of darkness into a drawing or painting in order to render light and shadow or give the illusion of three-dimensionality.
Along with drawing the human body, it's one of the things I get asked most to draw and to show how to create shading. So let me show you a couple tricks right off the bat with some shading. First thing we're going to do is, right at the top of our paper, we're going to draw just a strip like that, and we're going to cut it into blocks. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? Now in this block, this is going to be absolute black. We're going to get it nice and dark. Okay? As dark as I can get it. Now over here is absolute white. Now our job is to create a gradient. Slightly different shades of gray until we get to white. Now how do we do that? Well, let's give it a shot. So now that we've got this perfectly dark place, well, it's not perfect, there's still some white coming through. We're going to put in a little bit more dark here like that. Okay? Then the next one, we're going to make even lighter. Right? It's kind of getting there, right? But I'm going to stop before I get too close to the light, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to get this one a little bit closer back to my first one. Right? Then going back and adjusting and getting this even darker, right? Now I can go back here, get this a little darker. Now I can go back here, get this a little darker. Is it getting there? These two are a little too close, so I got to darken that one, which is going to make this darker, and this even darker. See, we're starting to get it. Now by the time we get here, just a few lines, right? This is even where you can start smudging across. And eventually, we're not going to get that bar anymore. So check that out. It's pretty cool. We have now a whole group of shades, but the key is that we thought about absolute black and absolute white. I notice a lot of young students will go in there and start shading, and everything just starts turning gray because they're putting shading everywhere, and they're forgetting that to have a light source. So now that we understand this, let's make some geometric solids, because basically everything in the world is made out of shapes. So we looked at flat shapes before, now we're going to look at solids. So let's draw a cylinder. Now a cylinder is basically two flat shapes put together to make a third shape. So a cylinder, if we look at it from the top, is a circle. And if we look at it from the side, is a rectangle. So we take those two shapes, we take that circle, bend it in space, and you create an oval, like that. And below will be another oval. Connect, there's our rectangle. And what do you know? We have a cylinder, or glass, or can. So what we're going to do now to apply some shading, let's imagine there's a light source. Here's a light bulb, or the sun, right? There's the light. You can eventually erase that. If you want to draw it right on your picture, it helps to figure out where the light's coming from. So that means everything on this side is going to be light, and everything on this side is going to be dark, just like we did with this band up here. So let's start putting in what's called contour lines. And contour is another important art word.
Contour lines. In the world of art, a contour line is a line which defines a form or an edge. It is, essentially, the outline or silhouette of a given object or figure.
So one of the reasons we're applying shading here is to make things look more real, look more solid. So when someone's reading a comic book story or looking at an illustration, the more real and the more solid it looks, the more they're drawn into the idea of what that drawing is about. Okay, so let's start adding these contour lines. And contour, we're following again the shape, right? So we're going to put in some curved lines that follow the very shape of our cylinder. And now I can start putting in a little bit darker line on one side and start building up my shading, but gets less and less as I get towards the light. And as I get further away from the light, I have more of a shadow. I'm going to go in and I'm going to erase some lines so we're not looking through anymore. Right? Lines I don't need. Get rid of that. Darken up here. Now, it's always important to throw in a background, otherwise things just look like they're floating on the paper, so it looks like it's on a surface. The light's coming from the top, so there's more light here, and even though there's light fully on the top here, I'm still going to throw in a little bit of shadow, right? And this is going to have a cast shadow, and the cast shadow is probably going to be a rectangle shape, just like we see, right? And then I'm going to throw that in, a little bit of shade. Okay. Go back in and adjust, like we did before, until we get the right tone that we want. Now this is just a quick example, but the more time you spend on creating a solid like that, and it looks like you can almost pull it right off the page, you can create anything. So let's work on another shape that's similar. Let's make a sphere. Flat circle, when you make it into 3 dimensions, becomes a sphere. Easy, pretty easy to draw. Just kind of make a circle like that. Put it against the ground again. It's going to have an oval or an ellipse. An ellipse is just another word for an oval. And we put in a shadow like that. Let's go in and start throwing in our contour lines. Once again, the light's coming from the left. Here's my contour lines. And then I'm using something called cross-hatching. So I continue to cross-hatch. She'll come in with, I'm going to continue to cross-hatch. And this is how I'm building up my dark surface. My shading is through cross-hatching. Right? And there's the darker side away from the light. And I keep on adjusting as I go towards the light. Cross-hatching as I go. But you see, I'm leaving the right side alone. I'm not putting any shading there. I'm just keeping to where the shadow is. Because if I started doing that and throwing in more stuff, it's going to start graying up. Okay? And I'm going to lose that feeling of a solid shape. So that's a part of the illusion of creating these solid shapes, is that you need dark, dark, and light, light. And there we have it. There's our sphere. So we've got our cylinder, we've got our sphere, and there's a couple other shapes that are really important. They're very, very simple, but if you learn to do them just like these other shapes, you can pretty much build anything. So let's do a cube. And I'm sure you guys have done this before, where you draw two squares like this, right? And then you just connect the top and the bottom, and we have a cube. So let's darken in the lines we need. Let's get rid of the ones we don't. Right? Let's throw in a background so it's sitting on a surface, because with that surface now we can have a nice drop shadow. Light's coming from here, so this side's going to be really dark. It's going to have a shadow that's probably even darker. So we're going to cross-hatch to get that idea. Right? Light's at the top. We're going to leave that alone. And this side's going to be a little bit darker than the other side, than the top, but not as dark as this side. Something like that. And again, just more and more practice of building up, right? And maybe even erasing where you don't need lines. Because again, this illusion that we're creating is all based on light and shadow and the contrast, which is another important art word.
Contrast. The arrangement of opposite elements, light versus dark colors, rough versus smooth textures.
Okay, so now that we're getting this contrast between light and shadow, we're creating this illusion of 3D shapes. One last shape. Let's throw it in. This is a cone. A cone is basically when you put a triangle and a circle together. So here's our cone, the triangle, but then there's another ellipse at the bottom, or a oval shape. We'll continue the floor along that way. Light's coming from this side. Contour lines. Cross-hatching. Drop shadow looks like a triangle. Okay. And once again, it's the same kind of thing where you just take your time and you slowly build up these shapes to look more and more three-dimensional. Now, if you really practice this and really put a lot of time into it, you can eventually make this stuff look exactly like it's 3D and you can pick it off the page. We're almost getting there, right? Okay. Remember when we drew that super stick figure? Now, what's really cool about that stick figure, you can pose him any way you want, but he's still kind of flat. We can actually apply these shading techniques we use with simple shapes to the stick figure. And we're going to do that right now. So here I've already started, made the stick figure. Make sure you go back and see the old show to see how we made that. Now, first thing we're going to do is look at the shapes we have and figure out how they fit into the shapes we created. So the head's an oval or a sphere, right? The rib cage, we're going to make a big sphere as well. The joints are spheres, right? His arms the top part of his arms, we're going to make cylinders. Check that out. Almost looks like macaroni. All right? We're basically making a robot. Going to give him a neck, which is another cylinder. The rest of his spine, another cylinder. His pelvis is like a cube, like that, with 2 spheres on each end. Let's go back to his elbows, which are spheres. And now his forearms, which kind of taper, we're going to make into cones. Long cones like that. And for now, we'll leave the hands as spheres. The thighs, cylinders. Just like that, going into the knees, which are spheres. And you know what? Our shins kind of taper as well, so we can make those cones. Down to the feet. And now I'm just leaving the feet as sort of these triangular wedge shapes. So when we see them from the side, they'll look like a triangle, right? Curve around for the heel. From the front, we'll always see it as a triangle. Just put in the other cone. Right? You really should be proud of yourself. You've done some amazing work today. It's very challenging to do shading, and it's really challenging to draw the human face and the human body. But keep practicing, and I promise you, the more you practice, the closer and closer you're going to get to the goals that you want with your drawing. And always remember that creativity is inside you, not on the paper. Talk to you soon.